Good evening and welcome to the January 14th, 2013 regular meeting of the Waterloo Community School District Board of Education. I hereby call the meeting to order. And a couple of quick notes before we begin. I will need to leave tonight at 7 p.m., so around that time may sneak out of here and turn it over to Bernice Richard. And then also Sue Flynn is unable to be here tonight just for family reasons. But with that, now please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Now please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'll read the district mission statement. The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community. The first item on our agenda is a public hearing, and this is for the transfer of district property proposed to be transferred to the City of Waterloo. And notice of this public hearing was published in the Waterloo Courier. A copy of that is included in our board agenda under Exhibit A. At this time, I will declare the public hearing open. Again, this is regarding transfer, disposal of property, and the property in question is essentially the floodplain area around and behind Devonshire School at 515 Devonshire Drive. The proposed transfer is to the City of Waterloo for a water retention project. It'll be on our agenda for vote later in the meeting, but right now this is a public hearing portion, so if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board, now would be the time to step forward and state your name and your address. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board regarding this topic? Okay, then what we'll do is maybe when we're voting on it, I believe Mr. Ellis is here from the engineer's office. As we go through that process on the agenda, Mr. Ellis, we may have you come up and just give a brief overview when we get to that as Exhibit G. All right, well, if there's no one that wishes to address the board, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
And thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the chair votes aye. Motion carried. Then the next item on our agenda is board celebration regarding mentoring. That January is mentoring month, and our teammates program here in the Waterloo Schools, which is organized by Ellen Vanderloo, is here to discuss that, and also Crystal Buzza. So Ellen, I'll turn it over to you if you could give us a background on this.
Well, it's always nice to come and address the board and give you a positive report, and I'm happy to point out that this year, through the Teammates Mentoring Program, which is now 3 years old, we have 165 adult mentors who are coming at least one time a week and spending an hour or a class period with a student in the Waterloo Schools in between grades 3 through 12. So we're really excited about the increase in numbers that we have, and also in some of the data that we've been able to collect. Every semester we collect data on the attendance of our mentees, their office referrals, and their grades. And the numbers that I provided for you are from last spring. 25% of the students that had mentors showed academic performance improvement. And the way Teammates measures that is they take their highest grade and then if they've improved on that. And so I feel that our numbers are even better than that, because if a student had an A in the fall semester and got an A in the spring semester, they didn't show any improvement. So that wouldn't be shown in these numbers. So they're looking at changing how they figure that data. But still, I feel it's good that we do see an improvement in grades of students that have mentors. 31% have shown fewer office referrals, and my secretary Lindsay Jackson collects that data, and what she's seeing just as she collects the data is that the referrals to the office are less severe type things too. They're less physical kinds of things, maybe the referrals are more verbal, but it's a decrease in number and also of severity. And then what I'm most happy about seeing is we have almost a 40% increase in attendance. So the more we can keep our students in school, we know that the better they're going to do in school and the more likelihood that they're going to be graduating and going on and being successful in life. So we're very happy about that. And then I included our list. We have an advisory committee, and I wanted to also point out that we just added another board member, Dr. Jessica Moon, who is an advisor for the honors program at UNI. And we are working closely with UNI students through an organization they started called PALS, it's Panthers Allied with Local Schools. And those students they're actually presidential scholars that have really identified that they want to get more involved in our schools, and Dr. Moon is their advisor, and so we've included her on our advisory board as well.
And I just wanted to jump in and just thank the board for all of your support with mentoring and with the Teammates program. We've been able to do a lot of good, and so without your support we wouldn't be able to have this program and be able to also have mentoring through Big Brothers Big Sisters, which also provides 45 in-school mentors, and we also utilize mentors through the Job Foundation as well. So thank you.
So between the three mentoring programs that Crystal just mentioned, we have close to 233 total mentors that I'm aware of anyway in the schools. So
And that's fantastic. Now, I also understand, though, we're always looking for more mentors.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And
Most
how could you go through how, if anyone's interested in becoming a mentor, how they get involved?
they can look on the Waterloo Schools website. They can call me here at the district offices. They can look at teammates.org. There's an application process on the Teammates website as well. So yes, we are always looking for additional mentors.
I think there's some candidates from the Devonshire neighborhood seated out in the audience tonight.
That would be wonderful. And I might just mention that all of our mentors do go through a thorough criminal background check, and we check child abuse registry, adult abuse registry, and then I do a 2-hour training with our mentors as well before they're matched with a student.
But just the mentoring actually is not a huge time commitment, correct? But it's well, from experience, it's a very rewarding experience, I understand, for the mentors.
And it's the consistency,
Yeah.
just
Meeting
showing up
Typically once a week.
once a week,
And for 1
an hour
hour
a week or
Okay.
one class period a week.
But it can have a huge impact, as we can see in the numbers here on the lives of the students. Just that 1 hour a week. So.
I have a couple questions on your performance metrics. And I know you said you're going to change them, and that's probably appropriate. On the fewer unexcused absences, does that mean 39% of the students had fewer unexcused absences, or
of the
there were
students that
fewer-
had mentors.
Pardon?
Of the students that had mentors, we compared first semester to second semester, and like in the spring semester, when you looked back at the fall semester, they had fewer unexcused absences in the spring.
but the total number of unexcused absences was 40% less, or 40% of the students?
40% of the students
So the other 60% could have had more.
could have,
Okay.
or the same.
It seems like, why wouldn't you use our normal percent attendance metric, that's standard, before and after?
That's the way Teammates reports gives me the numbers, so I just reporting to you the way I'm giving them.
All right, it's really not meaningful to me, I mean, particularly when it's below 50%, fewer disciplinary referrals. If 31% had fewer, 60% could have had more. So, again, I'm not seeing the value in these metrics.
Well, and some of them, there may be a number of mentees that don't have any referrals, office referrals.
Right.
And so they don't show a decrease or an increase.
What, do we have the latitude to develop metrics that are more meaningful?
These are the data that's collected by the Teammates organization that we work with.
We could certainly look into doing something more specific, and actually we've been working with teammates. They have a local person from the corporate office, which is based out of Omaha, Nebraska, that just moved to Waterloo, and so we've been working with her and giving her suggestions on things that would make more sense. So we will definitely share that feedback, but we can look at finding some more data that makes a little bit more sense and break it down more and share that with the board at a later time.
Because then it would also be comparable to our other students, so
Yep,
we can see
absolutely.
how they are. And you already mentioned academic performance improvement, 25% improved. What about the other 75%?
Right, yep.
So if we can't get them to change, at least we can parallel
Yep.
the reporting of things that are fit into our standard metrics a little
Yep,
better.
certainly.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you for all that hard work that you do organizing this, because it's very beneficial to our students, the mentors.
is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Ellen,
Like-
thank
as
you,
Krista said.
and thanks to all the mentors as well. That
Yes.
we appreciate their work and but your leadership as well so much. So it's a very good thing.
Thanks.
Yes. And thank you again. The next item on our agenda is information from individuals and delegations. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the board? It can be on any topic. All right, if there are none, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that is Exhibit C. It's on in your board packet on page 5. And this is regarding the superintendent's contract. And I'll give a little bit of background, and then we'll get the motion on the table. We had our traditional superintendent review in June, as we do always. And at that time, this past June, we discussed an implementation of a pay-for-performance plan. Nationally, it's a topic of a lot of discussion. I think the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, in Chicago had implemented some things there, but it really nationally, over the last few years, it's been discussed much more. However, in Iowa, we found out that it's fairly unique right now. There's some districts that are starting this. I think Sioux City and Council Bluff come to mind in a certain way. But it's somewhat unique. And so this fall, Dr. Norris and then an ad hoc board committee of Sue Flynn and Andrea Sparks and Lyle Schmidt met the four regarding the kind of parameters in the system to set up a pay-for-performance program here in the district. So in December last month, at our mid-year evaluation, we discussed the plan with Dr. Norris, and then one outcome of that was to update and extend the superintendent's contract, but to update it for the pay-for-performance plan. So what we're going to do is this year will essentially be kind of a trial run, but in June our plan is to have a program in place and have the parameters in place as well. What we found is because it's a unique program, we're going to have to kind of sort some things out in terms of the data and the parameters we have in there. One example comes to mind is, for example, graduation rate is always reported 1 year behind. Some data points are reported in the spring, some are reported in the summer, some are reported later. So we're just working all that out, and what our plan is to work all that out here over the next few months and kind of, again, treat this year as a trial run. But put that in place. I think from the board discussion, we can talk about that when we get the motion on the table, but I think everybody was optimistic about the direction of the district. We've come a long way, but we have a ways to go as well, and we're working on that. And we're trying with this plan to continue that. So with that, I'll give the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the contract with the superintendent. Can we get that on the floor?
So move.
Okay. Okay, and moved and seconded. In discussion, are there any other board members? We've got a copy of the contract out. Andrew, you should have one there on your desk, but essentially I've given a background on that. Dr. Norris, you have some of the parameters with the pay-for-performance plan. Would you like to give maybe a brief summary of that?
Well, sure. Our committee decided that the pay-for-performance plan would parallel our 5 strategic focus areas in our strategic plan that you can see up on the wall. But student achievement and development is going to weight 40% of the whatever amount of money the board puts into this. And some of those assessments are how we're doing on Iowa assessments, graduation rate, how many kids we have taking AP tests, national merit, post-secondary enrollment, enrollment options, PSEO classes. So we're really trying to look at a bunch of different indicators of the academic health of the district. And then the second area is our strategic focus area on human assets. We're going to look closely at how we recruit and retain teachers. We're going to look at the teachers' attendance rate, looking at how we develop our staff, what types of staff development we offer, and then several other initiatives, wellness initiatives and things like that that have to do, and that will be weighted 20% of whatever money goes into this plan. And then we're looking at the three other areas, operational excellence and financial sustainability. We're looking at some of the more traditional measures like our unspent balance and several things like that. Community engagement is the fourth area, and that both financial sustainability and community engagement will weight in at 10%. And community engagement, we just had a piece of it, mentors and school partnerships and a number of business partnerships and the number of parents accessing
the information, yes.
Infinite Campus. Things like we're doing some parent satisfaction surveys later this spring. And then the final one, number 5, climate for learning, is going to be assessed at 20%. And things like daily attendance, how people are feeling about safe schools on the Safe School Survey, incidents of bullying, incidents of violence, and things like that. So we're really taking a broad-based look at the school district.
Yeah, Lyle and Andrea, I wasn't on this committee, but I have to say I was pretty impressed with this. This gets down to the brass tacks. I mean, it's not just the 30,000
Yeah.
level.
I think we feel
Right,
I
right.
think we feel good about it, and there's been a fair amount of time, some from the board, but mostly by the administration, developing this. We think it is important, and it is a pretty significant departure from the past, and it is in the direction of at least the conversation, the national and state conversation on this. We reviewed the other programs that they're in their infancy in the state, built on that with some other knowledge, and then developed some principles, some of which were, for example, we wanted as much standard data as possible to automatically roll into this program. We wanted it to be scalable down to the next level and the next level below that if we choose sometime to apply it at those levels. So I think it has a lot of good features. It'll be real interesting to see how it does work out in the pilot stage, and if it works as we think, why this would be something that, say, if we think it's successful, that we might want to share at the school board convention or something else, because I think right now we're probably just a step ahead of some. There might be some others working on it we're not aware of, but right now, and we'll go into more detail at the next meeting, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I think we have something pretty good here. When you look at something, when you start thinking about performance pay plan, where do you start? And I think we did a good job by just naturally focusing on our 5 strategic areas that were adopted in 2009. That's the logical place to look.
Any questions or any further discussion? If not, thank you to Dr. Norris.
Thank you.
And to the committee as well for your work on this. And it will be something we'll be working on over the next few months as we move ahead.
And the weight factor, you might notice, is designed so that every board can change that every year, and everything else just should calculate
Yes. okay.
automatically. So as the board looks at the areas of focus and decides we need a little bit more focus on this and a little less on this, it should be
Gotcha.
relatively easy
Okay.
for future boards to adapt this.
Right. Instead of having the same percentage every year, we
Yes.
can look and see where we really need more input in.
Mhm. Great. Thanks again. Yeah. If there's, any further discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the chair votes aye. Motion carried. The
Thank
next-
you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Norris. Yeah. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and tonight it consists of 4 items: the minutes from our December 6th, 2012 special board meeting, December 10th, 2012 regular board meeting, personnel appointments and adjustments since our last meeting, which again was in early December, bills due and payable between board meetings over the last month, and then lastly, the disposal of real property regarding the Devonshire matter. Are there any items that board members wish to be removed?
Item
Yeah.
G, golf.
We've discussed G regarding Devonshire. And I'll also ask that item F, bills due and payable between board meetings, be removed. Anything further? Okay. If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of item F and G.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the chair votes aye, motion carried. That then takes us to Exhibit F on page 12 in your board packets. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the bills due and payable and the bills paid between board meetings.
Move to approve.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Okay, and for discussion, before we get into discussion, I will abstain from voting on this matter because as an attorney, I represent a client who's paid by one of the bills. Any further discussion?
I'm just curious about one item, and just because of curiosity. It's on page 16. And let's see, it's down, it's the 6th one, it's Iowa Prison Industries. What do they make for us?
Furniture.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Furniture, okay.
This table you're using right here was made by Iowa Prison Industry. A lot of our student desks come from Iowa Prison Industries.
And I think they have for a number of years, and I think one of their chairs was developed with, I think, feedback from Waterloo. I think I think they've been involved for a long time, but they have a booth set up at the Iowa Association of School Boards. It's always different to see, but
Oh,
they produce-
fascinating.
yeah, they sell to a
Fascinating.
number of, I think just within the state of Iowa, but I think they sell to a number of school districts.
Once you get past the stripes, the furniture looks really, really good. But it's
Hey, that was just a curiosity.
okay.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the chair abstains, motion carried. Then this brings us to item G, the Devonshire matter. It's on page 29 in your board packets. The recommended motion is that the board accept the recommendation of the School Board Facility Committee and approve the $1 disposal of the Devonshire School floodplain property to the city of Waterloo. Can we get that motion on the table?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Okay, in discussion, we've got Jim Ellis here, who's the engineer, and maybe ask him to come up right now. I'll give a brief background. I'm also on the Facilities Committee meeting, but this was the City of Waterloo, I think, has looked for years, and I think the neighbors have as well, regarding water issues and drainage issues, stormwater runoff. The Devonshire school property is maybe roughly 7 or 8 acres. Okay. And this area that's been, that Mr. Ellis platted off is 5.85 acres. It's generally, I guess, south of the school, and then the portion that's on the east. It would encompass the park, or the playground area that's there as well. But the city's plans for it are essentially for a retention pond. It's been discussed here for years, and I think the city's been working on it as well, but it was brought before the Facilities Committee. We've been talking about it for months, and I think talked with neighbors as well. As I understand it from the city, they finally have have it in their budget either for the capital projects or that, but the city's ready to proceed. So the proposal is to transfer it to the city for $1.
Yes, thank you for letting us come and speak with you tonight about this. My name is Jim Ellis. I'm with JDE Engineering, and my firm has been retained by the city to develop the stormwater improvements for the area. The map that Dr. Norris is holding right now kind of gives you an outline in red, and I'll save these maps until after the meeting, so if you have any questions, you can come and get a little closer look. But this is the outlined in red. There is actually the Delane Avenue, what we refer to as the Delane Avenue drainage basin. It's about 440 acres, and it extends down to the south almost to San Martin Drive, all the way over to Prospect Boulevard, comes all the way over to West 4th Street as it crosses Ridgeway. It's a very large drainage basin, and the Devonshire School site actually sits at the lower end of the basin. So to address some of the flooding issues that has occurred in the past, especially the most recent past is 2008, there was a lot of damage done to Delane from water actually overtopping the existing piping system and actually damaging the roadway surface as it approached the front of many of the homes that face Delane Avenue. So to address this, we've actually, through being retained by the city to look at the preliminary engineering of the drainage basin, we've built a model through some of the AutoCAD software and the drainage software to actually model the storm events, the larger storm events in this basin, and then come up with a list of improvements to address these flooding issues. One of the biggest improvements, the one that's going to carry the most weight for improving the situation in the future, is the building of this basin. Now, as part of the project, there's really about 10 different phases all built into this one big project, from piping system changes through the existing underground storm sewer system, the building of the basin itself, improvements to the inlet structures and outlet structures, and cleaning the drainage channel, and there's about 10 different pieces to it. But the city is really ready to move ahead with the land coming underneath city ownership into the final design phase of the project. That final design phase is going to take almost another 10 months to get through before we're actually ready to start construction. And then we do have to work into the city's capital improvements program to actually build the basin. So this is a drawing from the surveyors that actually shows the land that's being turned over to the city. The Devonshire School site on the bottom remains the school's property. It's only the field that's being transferred to city ownership. And then that would be the section that would be used to build the detention basin. Now, what we're planning, it's going to resemble very closely to the low area just across the street from Covenant Medical Center, Bontrager Park. There's going to be some inlet improvements, a lot of drainage channel improvements. The building of the basin itself, it's going to be about 10 feet deep by the time we're done. And then the outlet improvements to really get the most benefit for the area. There are more improvements in the area because, like I say, there's 440 acres that we've actually modeled. There's another half a dozen improvements higher in the basin that will come later that will actually help with some of the localized flooding issues that they have too. So this is really just the first phase, but it's really the phase that's going to carry the most weight in improving those future drainage issues in the big storm events. So this is where we're at. Like I say, we've completed preliminary design. We know how big we want to make the basin. Now we just have to go through the process of final design, tweaking the model to make sure it works in all storm events that we've tried, and then refining everything down to a final plan set specification so we're ready to bid it to contractors. So that's where we're at. Be more than happy to answer any questions. Ron and Nancy from the neighborhood, that's really the spokespeople that kind of report back to everybody else in the neighborhood that's interested, are also here. They've been really good to work with. The city's been good to work with through the preliminary design, and like I say, we're ready to move to final design. So,
One of the items that came up during the conversation with the city, I believe, at the facilities meeting was not necessarily, well, the intent, I guess, to use the west end of what remains the school property as an area for fill.
yes.
And that would be two things. It helps the city because they don't have to transfer the excess material as far, but it also then elevates the remaining property, 2 lots probably,
Mm-hmm.
that the school system has,
Sure.
such that they become buildable lots. Is that your understanding as well?
That is correct. The area you're talking about is right off of this area. There is an existing low area out there. And you're very right in saying if we don't have to transport material far, it really brings the cost of the final project down a lot. In fact, we've done some preliminary cost estimating up to this point, and we're talking, we're looking at preliminary numbers moving almost 140,000 cubic yards of material out of that area. The earthwork contractors, to say the least, are really waiting for this project because they're like, that could take a long time. But some of the numbers that we've been looking at per yard of material, I mean, you get the big tractors and dozers out there, they're looking at somewhere around $6 a yard to transport it somewhere in the city. If we can transport it on site, we could get it as low as $2 to $3 a yard. So the closer we have an area available to transfer that material, the less and less the project's going to cost. The preliminary cost estimate for the detention basin design and construction, or just the construction phase, is right at $1.3 million. So if you can take $1 off for 140,000, every 140,000 cubic yards is $1 less. That's a big savings for the city. So yes, there is that spot on site that we'd like to level and use some of this excess material in that area, sure.
The thought then was that it would be attractive for a residential lot would fit right in with the neighborhood.
It could. The area out there where the school is at is about, a typical residential lot is usually ranges at about 120 feet deep, 115, 120. The area that's left out there is almost 210 feet deep. And mysteriously, it just separates very well into 75-foot lot frontages. Mysteriously, that happened. But it does work out very well. So.
And we're getting that surveyed and plotted just so that we can, if we offer that for sale, that we've got the area drawn.
And we, as most of you know, we did offer it in the past and had some bids and some objections and some neighborhood issues, and mostly the water issues that you're now finally addressing,
Sure.
which is really a good thing. But because of the significant change, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're on the path of just saying, okay, let's develop it, and then we'll probably offer it again. I'm not sure. We don't have a final decision, but
Sure.
but those are thoughts that it's going to change significantly after you do your work.
Right.
So it's really not the same. Any previous bid isn't really valid anymore.
That's very true. What we're hoping for is when we're all done here, we can model the basin and show that we have controlled a storm event up to and including what would be classified the 100-year storm. If we can do that, everybody currently right now that pays flood insurance in the basin will not have to pay flood insurance. That's a huge benefit for people living in that area and for future development. So that is really, we have to model that in such a way that the Corps of Engineers, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources all concur with that decision. And then though that whole area comes off the FEMA's flood mapping, and then all those people then don't have to pay for flood insurance because we've controlled that. So that's really what the final design is all about, is getting those final reports to the point where the Corps and FEMA and everybody's going to agree that we've really taken a good look at it and we've really controlled those large storm events. And if people don't have to pay that flood insurance, that's huge. That's great.
It helps improve all the properties around there, including the district's
Sure.
property, yeah.
Yeah,
And that'd be much more
y-
marketable.
Your basin, after you finish your basin,
Oh, yes.
you reseed it, right?
Yes.
So it's a green area?
Yes, when we get done, usually what I like to do is actually hydroseed the areas.
Mhm.
And if we do that in the right time period and we get moisture right away, we could get grass growing on the site in about 2 weeks. So by the time they get it final graded, and if we hydroseed it back like that, not to say we don't get a real warm summer and, oh, my hydroseed just died. But we get nice moisture after that. I've seen the hydroseed come back in as little as 2 weeks, and then all of that will be grass, returned to
Okay,
grass.
great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the chair votes aye, motion carried. Mr. Ellis, thank you very much.
Thank
No
you, guys.
problem.
We
And I'll
appreciate your
keep
work
the
on this.
maps here until the end of the meeting if you want to take a look at them.
Okay.
I'm more
Okay.
than happy to.
Great, thank you. All right. Oh. Yeah, yes, no. All right, the next item on our agenda then is Exhibit H. It's on page 31 of our board packet, and this was regarding the technology pilot program for Chromebooks, for the Google Chromebook laptops. And Matt O'Brien is here. Before Matt starts talking, we'll get the motion on the table. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of 240 Chromebooks at a total cost of $66,960.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second. It's been moved and seconded. In discussion, Matt, if you could give us some background information on this.
Certainly. Good evening. As the board is aware, the district's strategic plan calls for providing interactive, technology-rich classrooms, which create an engaging environment for learning. So to support that, several years back, we created a plan for equity for computer distribution to ensure that our technology distribution between all of our students and teachers is equitable across the district. But on top of that, last year the board approved a pilot program where we ended up offering 11 classrooms in the district, a classroom set of either iPads or Android tablets, so we could evaluate how effective these devices were in our classrooms. And we're currently in the second round of collecting perception data with that pilot. In a response to teacher feedback we received from that pilot on some of the limitations of tablets, and also in an effort to continue to thoughtfully evaluate various types of technology to see how they may be a beneficial vehicle to increase student engagement and student achievement in our classrooms. This year we offered our teachers the opportunity to apply for a classroom set of Chromebooks. And if you're not familiar with a Chromebook, we have one in the district right now that we've been kind of piloting just kind of around in different classrooms that I brought with me tonight. It basically looks a lot like a laptop or a netbook, but the difference being that it actually runs, instead of Windows, it runs Google's operating system called Chrome. I'll give that to Dr. Norris, he can pass that around. And so these devices aren't able to run traditional Windows applications like an actual piece of software that you're able to install on a computer, but instead they're able to access the internet and any internet or cloud-based resource that is out there, which there's a plethora of resources that are out there that replace a lot of traditional Windows applications, such as Live at EDU for word processing, or Google Docs, both of which are word processing, productivity platforms, and obviously the gamut of educational technology resources that are available on the internet. Other big differences with the Chromebooks is they're dramatically cheaper than a traditional laptop, as you can see in the board packet that you have in front of you. And this particular Chromebook that we decided to look at in the district actually offers battery life that'll pretty much last throughout the day, where obviously we're lucky to get a period or maybe two out of a traditional laptop. So that's a big selling point, as well as some additional management capabilities, which makes them quite a bit easier for both us in the technology department as well as the teacher to manage the devices. So something that's definitely worth taking a look at. As your board packet states, we actually received 41 applications across the district from different teachers. And a committee from Educational Services and Technology Services reviewed all those applications, and similar to what we did last year with the initial tablet pilot, we reviewed those and scored those on a 4-part rubric. And through that process, 8 of those applications rose to the top as being excellent, and that consists of the board document proposal that's before you this evening. I did want to point out that the proposed classrooms are skewed more towards the middle school level. But if you look at your board packet, that's actually fairly representative of the applications that we received as well. We received quite a dramatic kind of skewing of applications towards the middle school level as well. So again, we tried to look at the quality of application. Turned out that many were skewed towards the middle school level, but again, that was representative of the applicants that we received. And we are happy that we will have pilots at the elementary level as well as at the high school level as well. So that's kind of the background, and certainly be happy to answer any questions.
What's the security, or what's the, well, I'm not too much of a fan of Google because they're sort of a corporate outlaw in terms of secretly collecting personal data. Will the students be exposed to that, or because of the nature of this application, is there some sort of a firewall there?
I could give you a long, complicated answer, but I don't think that the board probably wants that. The short answer is there's a bit of a difference between hardware, which is the proposal before you, and yes, it's Google's Chrome operating system that's running on that, and software, and a lot of Google's concerns that you brought up, Mr. Schmidt, as far as how they're collecting data revolves around their cloud offerings, which are accessible whether or not you're using these devices. So the short answer to your question is that there's no, in my opinion, no additional security risks with these devices as opposed to any other device that accesses the internet and accesses Google's resources. We'll still have this tied in to, we're looking to tie it in with our Active Directory system, which is what manages all of our accounts. So some of that information with all of our network accounts will actually reside on our servers and just syncs to the cloud to Google servers. But actual student information beyond just names that have nothing tied to them, even birth dates, anything like that, aren't necessarily going out to the cloud any more than they would be with students freely giving that information to other Google services such as Google Docs or just using the Google search engine.
So, but will Google see just Waterloo Community Schools, or will they see each individual student?
Complicated answer again to your question. It depends on how these are provisioned, and actually there's legislation which kind of surrounds the magic age of 13 as far as how we can even set up accounts with and without parent consent. So this actually dives into a much longer discussion with our AUP, which we revised last year, etc. At the elementary level, we don't even set up individual student accounts, so there's no elementary data at all. At the middle and high school level, they're seeing really no more than if you were signed into your Google account and searching with your Google Google account, which is accessible via a laptop or anything else. So they see Waterloo Schools, they see at the secondary level potentially, and I can't give you the technicalities without reviewing it further, but they potentially can see student names tied to that, but no more information. So not enough information to actually, be a HIPAA-FERPA concern. Not enough information that they would actually be able to identify students because we contain that master account information.
All right, we just need to be visual on that because Google.
Well, and for me, this
It's
is a
not
much
a-
broader discussion than just Google. This is any cloud services we use, and that's something that we're very cognizant of where our data is kept, whether it's in our data center upstairs at ESC or whether it's in the cloud. So I know people have good and bad opinions of both Google, Microsoft, et cetera, but this is, for me, a broader concern than just one particular vendor. It's something we always look at.
And Matt, getting to the request from the teachers, the 41 applications and those that were approved, what sort of things were the teachers looking to do? I mean, and that, I know it can be a broad,
Sure.
I'm sure there was quite a range, but was
There,
there,
there
kind of a
was
common theme?
definitely quite a range. The theme of all the applications really surmised as getting instant internet access to their classrooms of students, and obviously depending on the content area depended on how they were actually looking to leverage that. But the overarching theme, which is common sense, I guess, is just that unlocking the power of having a device in every student's hand as opposed to having to go to a computer lab or check out a laptop cart, that type of thing. Having it instantly available, kind of ad hoc on demand as opposed to having computer time schedule, lab time schedule, laptop time. And again, it kind of varied across applications. And if the board would like, we can certainly make those applications available to you if you'd like to see some of the more specifics.
No, that's fine. I was just curious as to what struck me on this the first time I read it was sort of the challenge of technology when it's always changing. And for a while, a few years ago, there was a big push in some school districts to have the one-to-one laptops. And if you decided in 2008 to do it, you would buy this generally. And if you did it in 2010, you might buy the first of the iPad. But then the next year there was the iPad 2. And now in 2012 and 2013, we have Chromebooks. It just seemed, and if you in 2008 decided to buy just laptops, you're kind of out of luck. It's moving that quickly. But I just didn't know what kind of you've explained it very well, but what the hook was for Chromebooks. How they're different.
And you kind of hit it there. To kind of expand on that, I kind of mentioned this in the proposal that I threw before you. But one of the driving factors by offering Chromebooks as opposed to tablets centered among some of the frustrations that we've heard from the initial round of teachers that have been using tablets, which is, they're absolutely great for a lot of reasons, but they're not necessarily a productivity device for content creation, and even have some limitations as far as the websites that they can actually access, such as Adobe Flash websites, etc. The Chromebook certainly represents, a different set of limitations, but it really is a traditional laptop in that it can be a productivity tool and it can access 95% of websites out there. So that was one of the driving factors beyond us wanting to experiment with this technology.
And let me say, I mean all this in a very positive way.
Sure.
I really like the pilot project, and I'm glad we're doing all three to see. And I'm also thankful we decided several years ago we really invested in Promethean boards, which still seem to be a very good thing, and that we did not decide to invest all of our technology budget in just one item without really checking it out. That's the danger of the one-to-one laptops.
Absolutely.
Once you do it, you're tied to it for years. And so I mean all that in a positive thing for the Waterloo district and the decisions that were made in the past and what you're doing right now.
Matt, this is a pilot program, so how are you going to collect data and see how it's going to gain?
Sure. That's a very
classroom.
valid question, and it's going to use the same platform for data collection that we've been using with our tablet, our initial tablet evaluation. The reality is that with the number of district initiatives that are going on, and particularly at the middle and high school level, where this is only necessarily reaching students one period out of a day as opposed to throughout their entire classroom day, we're not feeling it's fair to necessarily just look at test scores. So what we've been looking at a lot is perception data, and we've, as I mentioned earlier, we've actually sent out now a second round, collecting a second round now that the teachers have been using these for an entire year of their classrooms, collecting that perception data of the gamut. And if you'd like, I actually have a copy of the survey that we've been sending around to collect that. But the gamut of anywhere how they're actually using that in class to perceptions of, the number of students that are engaged in that activity, et cetera. So quite honestly, it's as much qualitative as it is quantitative, simply because of the reality of the pilot and the way that the devices are actually being used. But it is primarily through a vehicle of teacher feedback with those teachers and students as well that are participating in the pilot.
Can the district monitor how they're being used?
We do, and I was going to add to what Matt said. We have principals now on their regular weekly walkthrough visits that are collecting and gathering engagement type data. And so they'll be able to make some, it may, again, like Matt said, it may be a little more qualitative coming from our principals, but they'll absolutely be able to get a sense on, I'm curious, and I think we're all curious on what's the best use of them and how are kids engaging with them, and what types of assignments work best with that application, what things are best left the old-fashioned way. And
But qualitative data is also
It's
very
relevant.
relevant in this case, and as I
Absolutely.
mentioned, that was one of the primary feedback pieces that we got from the original pilot, which led us to look at Chromebooks as well to overcome some of the limitations of those devices as well. So.
If I could just say one statement here too, I would say that right now, because of the newness of the program, we're really focusing on measuring how it will impact instruction versus how it impacts the student learning right at the present time. But I think, obviously that we have to get to the part where we're trying to isolate the variable. If you're a stats person, that's always what you want to do, is try to isolate it so you know exactly the impact of the netbook or the Chromebook or the iPad or whatever you're using. But right now, honestly, that's the honest answer, that we're really focusing on how it's changing instruction in the classrooms.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out exactly what a Chromebook is. I have an iPad, and I know there's no software in it for like Word or Excel. Okay, but with the Chromebook, I can go out in the cloud and access.
So a Chromebook is
Same
basically
type?
Yes, you're on the right track, Andrea. It's a netbook or a laptop, but instead of running Windows, which is the traditional operating system, or Mac OS for Mac users, it runs an operating system which basically allows the students or teachers to access anything out on the internet. So all of the cloud resources, such as the Live at EDU resource that we use within the district for student email, and for the cloud-based versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, those type of things, the Google applications, any other web-based resources, whether they use Flash or any sort of plugin, the gamut of the internet. This is basically meant to access the internet. It's a low-cost device that allows students to access the internet. And now we know the internet is a much different place than it was even a few years ago, as far as the number of applications that are available without having them actually run on the computer itself, but run out in the cloud.
Okay.
So is there a fee then for the cloud storage?
In your proposal, you'll notice the device costs basically $250, and then there's a $30 fee on top of that. Google, when Chromebooks have been out now for almost 2 years, and when they initially came out, they weren't very popular because Google was doing them on a lease model, and basically this was a recurring fee that you had to pay for all of those management services, which obviously added up to having no cost advantage over a traditional laptop. Google has since kind of reversed course and now offers this for just a one-time fee, which then gives us that management capability for the lifetime of the device. So that's what that $30 portion of the $280 or $279 represents.
But it's for a specific amount of storage, I presume.
Yes. Now, there are various web-based resources that you can access with or without a Chromebook that are still going to offer you X amount of storage. For example, we use Live at EDU, which offers like 5 gigabytes or something like that of additional storage as well. So the cloud-based storage is more so on the service that the Chromebooks are accessing and less so on the actual device themselves. That management fee is actually more for the console, for all the updates, all of those type of things, which we get for the lifetime of the device.
So I'm sure not clear. Where will the additional storage be if needed?
What I'm saying is there are different mechanisms that students can use to store information. So two options. First is these are actually expandable. So if they wanted to actually store information on the device themselves, in addition to the memory that comes on it, we can put in an SD card just like you have on your camera or your cell phone and
Okay.
expand it that way.
Right.
Second option is in the cloud. We can either use Google Docs, Live at EDU, Dropbox. There's a lot of different cloud-based services that offer X amount of free storage, and then you're correct, you can pay for more of that. But to be quite honest, the amount of free storage that is out there for education, I don't see us at this point ever needing to pay for storage in the cloud
Okay.
for our students.
All right, thank you.
Also, is this just kind of we're taking some computers out of some rooms, and we would be buying some type of hardware anyway, and this is just another way that you're
This-
rotating new information into
We've
the
actually
system.
viewed this as above and beyond as our normal technology offering. So I kind of mentioned, our normal plan for equity. This is above and beyond that. So we make sure that all of our schools have a set ratio. Right now we're at 1-to-1 for staff and 1-to-3 for students. This is above and beyond that since it's a pilot program and since it's an application program.
Matt, how are we paying for it?
I was waiting for that question to get asked. This is part of our normally budgeted technology funds that we always have built into the budget. When we went with the initial pilot application of tablets last year, we knew this year we were looking at some sort of expansion. We didn't know at that time what device we were doing, but we did have built into our budget for this year that money. And with the Chromebooks, we're actually looking obviously at a very advantageous cost for that because it's the lowest cost device that we actually have out there.
So as being part of the budget, there's other things that you may have had in the budget that you had to cut because of this item then?
It comes out of our general technology computer line item, but built into that line item this year was both the anticipation of an expansion of this pilot, which turns out to be Chromebooks, as well as our normal life cycle replacement where we replace our oldest computers every year.
Well, you're saying above and beyond, but yet you're saying it's part of the budget, so I just wanted to make
No,
sure.
he's talking
so-
about above and beyond offering the books in the schools
Okay.
is
Right.
an opportunity for our kids that's above and beyond, but it's
Right.
not
It's
above
not
and beyond the
included in
budget.
our normal ratio of how we actually supply technology, but it was included, a pilot was included in that pool of money of that budget line item.
So if these are successful,
That's kind of what I'm getting at is,
what's the next step?
yeah.
The next step is a lot of conversation. If we're actually looking at a wider rollout of this, there's a lot of pieces that would have to fall into place. Obviously budgetary, but beyond that, staff and supports as well. So this is, in my view, the very beginning of conversations, just like last year was as well. I think we all acknowledge that at some point, some device is probably going to be in every student's hands. This is just another opportunity for us to try to determine what appropriate device and whether we're at that point yet, whether we're at the point where we want to supply each student with a particular device or how that should actually evolve. And this is just the very starting point of that conversation. If it is successful, we would probably talk about a larger scale pilot rollout, whether we did a grade level at a building or something like that, and then started conversations for a larger rollout. But again, the last thing we want to do is jump into something without having all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. And a one-to-one initiative is certainly a big deal and a paradigm shift for everyone. So we certainly are trying to be thoughtful of opportunities and careful. And make sure that we're making best use of our limited budget.
It actually goes from, if you're at a school now that either has a lab or has carts, teachers share by grade level. There's generally one, like at an elementary school, there may be one laptop cart per team of 4 teachers. And so they coordinate with each other and they plan which units are most important to them to have the computer there, et cetera, et cetera. With this, you're looking at we're going to be studying, will the teacher morph it into a full day, and will it be a tool that they can use most of the day, and is it justifiable, and things like that. What many districts have done that went too early to the one-on-one initiatives is they realized they didn't spend enough money on professional development for teachers. And so consequently, you can have all the technology out there, and if the teachers are not seeing the benefit to redesigning lessons and things like that. So.
And the data with the success on student achievement or student engagement with one-to-one pilots is very mixed. The only consistent thing, as Dr. Norris mentioned, is for it to be successful, the device is less important. All of that is less important. The number one thing is professional development and teacher buy-in. So that's why, again, I said, we're starting to look at things. We're starting with those folks that we know are kind of our leaders that are eager to pilot something, and then we'll look at how that goes and then kind of talk and go from there.
So are these all wireless?
Yes. Which was also very important, as you all know, a year and a half ago, we put a proposal before the board for starting to roll out a new, more robust wireless network, and then through E-rate funds, we were able to do a lot of other schools pass that as well. So that's something that has definitely been important as we've moved forward with additional devices, whether those be laptops or tablets or Chromebooks.
Are these dependent on Wi-Fi in a building?
Yes.
Okay, so if they get taken home and they don't have it at home, it's not going to be any use to them.
You're absolutely correct, and that's one of the very real items that is a reality in our district is the digital divide and that lack of access, which is a whole
Because there
separate
are
long
some
discussion.
units where you can get the plug-in access on the fly, so to speak. So.
Right. There's absolutely, these units can come with cellular cards, with
Right.
4G, 3G cards. Obviously, that's an additional cost for the unit, but more so, someone has to pay for that service. That service isn't E-rate eligible, so we'd be looking at someone absorbing all of that
Right,
cost.
right.
That's something that we've been talking about. CenturyLink is actually, through a FCC program, offered discounted internet service to our families that are disadvantaged for $10 a month. So it's something that we've been looking at, but it's another conversation point, and this won't address that.
Well, Matt, thank you very much, and to everybody involved in the pilot program. It should be very interesting to watch, and I think a very beneficial thing as well. If there's no further questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the chair votes aye, motion carried. And at this time, I will step out and turn it over to Bernice Richard to complete the meeting. Thank you, Bernice.
Exhibit I on page 34. Funding for the 2013-2014 at-risk education programs. And some background while Mrs. Turner come up to the podium. School districts may apply for revenue to serve students identified as academically at risk and therefore may be at risk of dropping out of school. At-risk education programs can also serve returning dropouts, these students who were not included in the previous year's budget enrollment. And we'll get the motion on the table, and if we have questions, we can direct those to Mrs. Turner. The recommendation is the Board of Education approve the 2013-2014 application for funding at-risk education.
So move.
Second.
Okay. If you have questions, Mrs. Turner, do you want to give us
Good
some
evening.
more background information? Yes.
Good evening. As you know, yearly we need to apply for allowable growth funding through Des Moines. This is the time of year that we send the proposal in. As you see, there are several programs that's covered by allowable growth funding, and you should also see the new programming that we're trying to put forth to serve the students in our district. Daily, we seek out ways to ensure all students are educated and then build programs in order to serve those students. I invite you to see the new program, Crossroad Connections, that recently opened the last couple of weeks. It's a great program serving our students, and we're very excited about it. The budget is here in detail for you, and Mr. Coughlin also will assist me in answering any questions that you have about our budget.
The programs that were featured in the paper, online, Is that covered under this funding?
I think the recent newspaper article had to do with some pilots we were running.
Virtual
And,
learning.
and that cost is actually coming out of our homeschool, I
that's a
believe.
different-
Jane, am I wrong on that? It is not homeschooled, okay. So it's probably just the general fund, Bernice, because it's not at-risk programming, but it's a small pilot.
And the article also included some credit recovery
Right, I saw
programming.
that,
And yes, some of the credit recovering options are under the allowable growth program.
thought-
So it's kind of a menu of programming that they talked
Okay.
about, and which covered some of ours, but virtual learning is another new one that we're exploring this year, as indicated by our superintendent.
Okay.
Earlier, I was trying to rationalize the cost here on a per-student basis, and particularly Expo, that's, of course, the big one at 1.7 million. And it seemed like that's about $4,000 a student or something in that range, which I guess the question is that the total cost? It doesn't make sense. Expo has always run more than our average cost per student, and I think our funding is at $6,000 a student right now. Or is it really 10,000? Is it 6,000 plus 4,000? How does this?
Well, we looked at that extensively in a flurry of activity
Yeah.
this afternoon after your email.
I apologize if it's that
No, that's
late.
okay. And what we actually found is we went back 3 years before we made the move and went to a more efficient expo. I think, Lyle, you remember what I'm talking about. We had, at one time, we had 20 teachers there, and I think we're at 14 or 15 now.
That's correct.
And once we did that, and once we went to the online delivery for some of the students, our cost per pupil did drop. And so high school education, Michael and I was looking at this afternoon also, high school education in our district is a little less than middle school or elementary, and this would be pretty close to the average high school cost now. It was higher, you're right, 3 years ago.
Okay. So I guess I'm wondering if I'm thinking now in terms of the 21st century task force with all the different models and all the different costs and so forth, and maybe it's worth our while to kind of maybe have a short presentation about what Expo does, what the features
Sure.
of it are, and
Okay.
the cost to compare with all the other visits we're making, because it's sort of
Yep, it's a hybrid.
a unique item that we
Yeah.
already have that, so I guess that's where I
We'd be happy to. That's great.
would.
Any more questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coral.
Exhibit J on page 36, contract for financial audit services. The district is required by Chapter 11 of the Code of Iowa to have an annual financial audit. The outside audit is performed through a contracted service with an independent accounting firm. In December of 2012, the Board Finance Committee addressed the issue and based on past satisfaction recommended that the proposal be presented to the full board for approval. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education accept the recommendation from the Finance Committee and approve the bid from Hogan Hansen to provide independent financial auditing services for fiscal year 2013 through 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Mr. Kaufman is here.
Who did we have before?
We are we are currently using Hogan Hansen
Okay.
for the last 4 years.
So, at one time there was a school of thought that you ought to change auditing firms every so often because the procedures get repetitious, and if there isn't anybody of criminal mind, they they know what will be they can anticipate better than if a new firm comes in and looks at it brand new, so it seems like a long contract.
We did follow that. When I started here 6 years ago, we had been with a firm for 15 to 20 years. And we did intentionally change at that time. The current school of thought is that a 10-year period is very acceptable, but then that would be a recommendation to change again. That's coming from the state auditor's office and from the government finance officials association, so that's kind of their rule of thumb.
Another interesting thing, just because of that, we see new bodies here every year. They don't bring even the exact same auditors each year, so they turn over within the firm. So we're going to get new critics looking at the.
Well, and I will say, both Bernice and I are on that committee, and one of the things I've been impressed with is their accessibility to us when we've met with them. We've met with them privately, just the people on the finance committee, without anybody from the staff or district around. I've been very impressed with their,
Okay.
I do think their level of professionalism, and again, I've never seen the same, we've never been presented to by the same people. Maybe they do that on purpose too, but I felt pretty good about it, so.
And from the background information, you did send out bids, but if they don't want to bid on our accounts, hey.
We can't make them.
Right. So, yeah. Any more questions? Okay, we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carried. And Exhibit K on page 40, board policy changes. This is the first reading for board policy number 603.4, home hospital services. Dr. Norris, I guess you will give us some information.
We actually have
of
Larry and Cora coming up to answer what questions you might have.
Okay.
The main changes to this policy is in previous years, actually about 2 years ago, the AEA, at least for the special education component, would provide the home instructors. They have taken themselves out of that, providing that service, and we have been doing that for the last 2 years. So it's just kind of language clarification that that Waterloo takes care of their own students.
Larry, I'm just curious, how many students in a month or in a year do we service with this kind of thing? I mean, I know it can really vary, but
It does. Currently we have about 5 students
okay.
Due to their significant disability that's either home or hospital bound for a long period of time. The other ones are shorter periods of time for surgeries and et cetera. Probably, at least for the special ed part, maybe one a month.
Okay. It's not 50.
So we are doing this in-house with our own employees,
Yes.
because I know when I was in the classroom and had a student in the hospital for a while, the person from AEA 266, or it was 7, AEA 7, came to my classroom to go over the material with me, and I'm wondering, do we have special people assigned to these duties, where with AEA, they have people to go around to all of the different schools? So do we have one special person or 2 special people? How does that work?
At least for me, I have special people, but they're my teachers. That yeah, so usually I look for, within the school building that student's from, a teacher that knows him or her. If they're not able to do it, then I open it up to other teachers throughout the district.
Well, that's a good policy, yeah.
I just wondered if you could pass that up. And
Of course,
Okay,
enough
so-
of them's watching it, so they'll never,
Okay, thank you. So this will come before the board again for the second reading.
So from a quality of service standpoint, it would be probability of it being better is greater than it because of the familiarity of who's ever providing the service with the classroom.
Yeah, and if it's an elementary student, I look for the elementary teacher.
Okay.
High school student, I look for the high school teacher.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
thank you. Superintendent's report.
Well, again, thank you for the passing the new contract tonight, and also thank you very much for giving us the challenge of trying to measure the performance of the superintendent a different way. I think the committee knows that I had some measurement like that in a previous district, but this is far more all-encompassing. That was purely on only academics, and so I look forward to this. I might also just review our December 6th meeting with the board that we had, that we just revisited our top priorities at that time, and we all agreed that in moving forward as a district, certainly raising student achievement was number one. We also have some important things coming up in the next few months of budget adjustments because of the funding that's been withheld and the funding that was short-term only. And so we're going to be looking at staffing and budget adjustments. Also, big project to the board and the superintendent right now going on is reaching community agreement for some type of high school delivery system, as Lyle was just mentioning. And then this superintendent and building leader accountability system, we'd like to move the new accountability system for the superintendent down to the building leader level. I think that was mentioned earlier. We're working hard at raising the image of the district both internally and externally, and we're finally something that's surfacing now again is developing a comprehensive plan for improving participation and competitiveness of district athletics. And so, not that the strategic plan is changing, but we're just going to really focus on those 6 priorities. So, thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Norris. Information from board members. Andrea,
I don't have anything right now.
Mike, Kenchi,
Nothing tonight.
Lau.
Just a question on the allowable growth. I think the legislature is supposed to set that within the first 30 days or 10 days or something like that. But this would be for not this coming year, but the following year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Have
are
we-
you talking about what we approved tonight, or are you talking about just the regular allowable growth?
Just the regular. I mean,
Yeah.
it set at 0 for. I think that's
Well,
permanently.
We're at 2% this year.
Or at 2. I thought it was.
It was 0 last year.
Oh, it's at 2%.
2% this year. But the legislature has not been following the code procedure of how soon they are getting to it. And they've come under some
Yeah.
concern with that. And so if it were a normal year, I think, Michael, they're supposed to announce it, like Lyle said, in the first 30 days of the session.
Actually, they were supposed to do it a year ago
Okay.
for 14.
You're right.
And then they're always a year ahead, but they're not even, they didn't even name it for 14 last year, so
Right.
they're a full year behind.
So does that affect you, or do we still have time? Or
Well,
you
we
just
just
assuming?
do budget planning based on several scenarios.
Yeah.
And saying if it's within the range, here's things that we'll have to do.
Okay.
I know it came out today that Branstad made a point that he wasn't going to name allowable growth until ed reform was finalized. So,
Okay.
And when we met with them back in December, we said, could we please take care of allowable growth first, and then get on to a very important discussion about ed reform. And we shared with him that we were very glad to help him move in that direction. But I fully get it, and I fully understand it. But in our budget planning that we're going to have to do, Michael, Michael is right. We're going to have at least 3 or 4 different scenarios, and we will have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Shanley?
I want to congratulate the Waterloo West men's swim team. They took first place in Fort Dodge this past Saturday at a great invitational. They beat 7 teams, and they're having a great season, so I think it's worth a little shout out to those guys.
Great. Thank you. Our next board meeting is January 28th, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.